but there's also this like quite mystical element to it, which is sort of inexplicable, and I don't want to ruin it because it's so special. I'm Ava Wong Davies. I wrote Graceland, and I'm in the Samuel French Bookshop to talk about some plays that I like. All right, let's do Miriam Batty, Scenes with Girls. Like, it was one of those plays that really took me a bit longer. It's sort of, I needed to like sit with it for a while, and I really sort of got it when I read it and reread it. It's a play about these two friends who are like super codependent, and it's kind of about like whether or not platonic relationships are enough for women, or maybe what do romantic relationships mean when, you know, they're sold to us so much and they're told that that's like meant to be the purpose of your whole life. And so language is like a really big part of it, because these two women like communicate in really strange ways. Like, they'll just sort of like say a word and then the other one will like understand exactly what they mean. And like sometimes it'll just be like intonation, so she's really like specific with sort of, and precise with like how each of them speak to each other, and you can sort of tell when the friendship is kind of tearing apart because the language kind of fractures a little bit and they sort of don't understand each other as well. And it sort of elevates the idea of female friendship in a really exciting and fresh and cool way. So yeah, great. Oh my god. Okay, why not? Okay, I'll talk about The Crucible. Not to be your English teacher, but like, I saw it really recently at the National. I sort of saw it with a friend, and we both knew the play very well because we'd studied it at school. But for some reason, like, it was just like things would happen and we would just like, we'd like be gasping and we'd like be like clutching at each other when like a really dramatic thing happened. And it's because it's like so perfectly formed. I think someone said once that like, you can't really cut it down, because if you cut one thing in sort of Act 1, it means that something in Act 5 like collapses. So you kind of have to like take it all as it is. And it's sort of like perfectly plotted. It's like a really beautifully made sort of clock, and it's also just an incredibly satisfying, unsettling, you know, strange, moving play as well. Great play, amazing play. Let's do Athena by Gracie Gardner. Again, it's like her dialogue is really, she sort of, I don't know how she does it, but she sort of really captures that thing that teenagers do, where like, when they kind of have this weird like clarity to how they speak, like it's sort of too clear. They can sort of see things like very, very clearly that maybe like you can't see as an adult, or like as an adult you kind of choose not to like bring to the surface because it's a bit awkward, but a teenager will just kind of say it, and there's so much of that in this. And it's sort of just really kind of, yeah, delicate and beautiful and really moving. And I don't know, I also love seeing kind of sports on stage, or like kind of dance or movement, and there's so much of that in this. And the stage directions are also just like stunning and like expressionistic, and same with Dance Nation as well. But they feel like such a sort of gift for a director. And so whenever I read like this play, I just kind of want to see it live because it feels so live on the page already. Yeah. It's a Song from Far Away by Simon Stevens, which is super underrated actually. I think this was like a big touch point for me and the director of Graceland, because Graceland is a monologue, and I was sort of trying not to read too many monologues, but it can be quite helpful to do that when you're writing in the same form. And it's the most like heartbreaking play. It is so bleak and beautiful as well, and the writing is so crystalline and sort of perfectly constructed. It's about like this man, I think he's called Willem, and he's from the Netherlands, and he lives in New York, and he gets a call one day from his mother saying that his brother's died and he has to come home. And it's like, through the language you can tell that this man is like has completely cut himself off from like anything messy, anything human, anything live. Like the writing is so contained and so restrained, and it is just completely devastating and yeah, amazing. This is Appropriate by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, which is a really, really brutal play, really unsettling, really uncomfortable. It's sort of this subversion of like the classic American family drama, in that it's about a white family who, these sort of estranged siblings who come back home to their father's home after he's died, and they're sort of settling up the estate, except the estate in question is this plantation home. They sort of find out that their father was this huge racist, to kind of like put it lightly. He sort of did these absolutely heinous things. Like there are so many layers to it, because it's sort of like, it's kind of like a haunted house story, because it's all taking place in this sort of like one living room, which is very cluttered, and you know, there's loads of stuff in there, and things sort of kind of move around, but you can't really tell why, and so there's a sort of like layer of like ghostliness to this. There's like so much sort of double meaning. Even like the title's appropriate, but it can mean, you know, what is appropriate, what is civilized, and what is not civilized, when, you know, what happens when the civility gets stripped away. But it's also like about to appropriate and to take, you know, from someone. And so it becomes this sort of really, yeah, unsettling satire and drama about America generally, and using that as a kind of commentary on America as a whole, which is very good, very impressive. Let's do The Welkin. It is like, I think probably one of the best plays the last 15 years, and this is like a big play about a group of like 12 women, but they're all sort of been called to this courtroom where they have to sit in a room together, and none of them know each other, and they have to sit in this room and they have to decide whether or not this woman should be hanged or whether or not she should be set free because she's been accused of murder. And if it was like just that, it would be amazing, because it's so rich in its characters and sort of all these differing sort of points of view, and all these like very robust sort of arguments that are being made for and against, sort of picking at people's biases and seeing what's underneath. But it's sort of, when I saw it for the first time, there are a couple of moments which just made the whole audience kind of go like, wait, what? Like, what happened? Like, was that a reference to like, how is that possible? Because if that happened, then that kind of means that the whole play needs to be, we need to like think about the play in a different way, because then how is it playing with time, and how is it playing with, you know, the rules that it set out for us? It's sort of saying that those rules aren't the case. Yeah. Perfect. This is Oil by Ella Hickson, which is another, I think, quite underrated play. I never saw it, but I only read it this year, but it's incredible. It is like, I just don't know why more people don't talk about it. And it's sort of about everything, which is great. Love that in a play. And it's sort of the story of oil. There's a lot in there about like how, you know, oil takes millions, hundreds of millions of years to be created, and then we've used it all up within, you know, 180 years. And yeah, it's really like, really special. I think it is really worth reading if you haven't read it. Yeah, that's Oil. Cool. This is God Is by Alicia Harris, which was on here. This is great. This is, again, like, I just love an American playwright who's sort of doing crazy things with form. This is such a sort of bold and, again, ambitious play. It sort of takes the form of like a kind of revenge tale, a sort of like kind of like a spaghetti western in some aspects. There's a lot of like kind of Afro-punk stuff in there, and it's about two sisters who kind of, they basically go on this like road trip basically across America in order to kill their father on the behest of their mother. And it's like really, the sort of poetry in it is like really like meaty and like muscular and sort of satisfying, and the sort of characters are all like, you know, bigger than life and sort of almost stock characters in some ways, and then they're sort of like exploded out and like complicated in really interesting ways. And it's sort of, it feels like a myth. It feels like sort of, she's sort of creating a new myth, like of America and sort of these two twins. I don't read that many plays where like violence is a really big on-stage spectacle. I think often it can be, you know, off-stage or implied, and it's sort of, in this one it's like right here, and it's sort of like, no, you're going to look at it and it's going to be quite fun, and it's going to be like Tarantino-esque, and it's going to be like this big splashy thing, and I really like the sort of the guts in that, and yeah, it's good.